Well, you are taking a live look tonight outside the Vatican in Italy, where people are paying their respects to the late Pope Francis.
We've seen people gathering at St. Peter's Square all day, where they just prayed the rosary 2 hours ago. Keep in mind they are 6 hours ahead of us right now, so we're closer to the 11 o'clock hour. And in the last 2.5 hours, just today, we learned that the Pope officially died of stroke and irreversible heart failure.
And many people say they're in shock to learn of the Pope's passing, less than 24 hours after he delivered his Easter blessing Sunday. The 88-year-old pontiff delivered the message from a wheelchair, with some saying he looked frail. However, he did get in the Pope-mobile to go around the square and bless everyone.
His death now comes weeks after he was hospitalized with pneumonia in both lungs. There was some recent sign, however, an indication that his health was improving.
Tonight, many Hoosiers are reflecting on the loss and legacy of Pope Francis, and that is especially true for local Catholics who met him in person.
Nearly a decade ago, hundreds of Hoosiers traveled from here out east to D.C. and Philadelphia for the Pope's very first visit to the U.S. Our Jenny Runovich covered that for us back in 2015, and today she caught up and had a conversation with people who made that very impactful trip. Jenny?
And it was impactful, ladies. It's still something many of them tell me they still talk about regularly all these years later. A once-in-a-lifetime experience with a once-in-a-generation leader. They say even in crowds, Pope Francis was able to foster a personal connection and deepen people's faith.
This energy, these images a decade ago still resonate with Indiana Catholics.
The crowd was roaring. It's like the beginning of the Indy 500, just the crowd's going crazy.
Among tens of thousands in Philly and D.C. in 2015, hundreds of Hoosiers who made the pilgrimage to see Pope Francis in person. They're now reflecting on his loss, his legacy, that sacred time they got to be close to a man of God.
A chance of a lifetime for sure.
Just think that we got to go be there.
Patrick Bauer distributed communion during Francis's first visit to the U.S., stood just feet away as the Pope blessed the crowd. He calls it a Holy Spirit moment.
Where we were, he went right by in front of us in the Pope-mobile. And then when the crowds, the way they erupted, the enthusiasm, the excitement, just the whole atmosphere of Philadelphia was just, this is just something special.
The energy in the city is just enormous.
David DeLacco was there with his growing family. He says Francis was humble, genuine, kind, proved why he's known as the People's Pope.
He was a pope concentrated on showing the world love, caring for the most vulnerable. To see his love for the people, during our visit, and just someone that truly cares for each human soul.
It's that legacy that Hoosier Catholics are celebrating now, even as they mourn his loss.
He was more than a priest. He was the shepherd of the little people. When I was a stranger, when I was an immigrant, when I was hungry, when I was poor, those are the people you reach out to. And he just exemplified that in such a gentle, good manner.
Keep him in our hearts and our prayers, and to move ourselves forward in life and remember his work.
Hoosiers say Pope Francis deepened their faith and gave them memories here they'll never forget.
And it might sound a little strange to feel a personal connection with someone in a crowd of tens of thousands, but to a T, that's what everyone described about their experience with Pope Francis. And I can tell you guys, I felt it too while I was there. Folks told me today it was just his way of genuinely welcoming everyone to the church that set him apart. But both places were electric. And to see how he connected with people was pretty impressive.
Really bring people to the faith.
Oh,
letting
for
people
sure.
know that they're included.
Yes.
Who am I to judge?
Exactly.
And to think that just yesterday he was among the people, he was doing his work, and
Right.
ended up working apparently his entire life. It's just
To the
inspiring.
last. Yeah, it sure is. And by the way, if you want to see more about the Pope's visit to the U.S., kind of how Hoosiers experienced that time, we've compiled all of our coverage from then right now on WTHR Plus. Lots of impactful stories to share. Just download on your TV and watch for free.
All right. Thank you for bringing us that, Jenny. And we're also hearing from the Archdiocese of Indianapolis tonight.
Archbishop Charles Thompson sharing a statement and also a picture that was taken of him with the Pope when he met him during a meeting with U.S. bishops back in 2019. The Archbishop said, quote, "The late Pope's desire for openness, dialogue, and transparency offered us many opportunities to see firsthand how he responded to the pastoral and social challenges of our time." Tonight, we're also hearing from a former Indiana senator. He's a man who got a chance to work with Pope Francis during his time serving as the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See.
Joe Donnelly appeared on the Today Show this morning where he said it was a privilege of a lifetime to work with Pope Francis, and then he went on to talk about the Pope's legacy.
I think it will be the legacy of kindness, of the Bible quote, "Whatever you do for the least of us, you do for me." And that was pretty much the center of his papacy. And as was said, he took the world by storm. His kindness, his love, it was a reflection of, for so many in the church and so many around the world, what they had hoped to hear.
Now, as you may know, Pope Francis was the first Latin American pontiff born in Argentina.
And he charmed people all around the world with his humble lifestyle and his concern for the poor. Melanie Zanona now shares how U.S. and world leaders are now responding to news of his death tonight.
The mournful sound of St. Peter's bells fills the air as the world processes the passing of Pope Francis on this Easter Monday. The faithful taking part in a rosary this afternoon as his body lies at Casa Santa Marta, his home. His death coming just a day after he greeted throngs in Vatican City, touching millions around the globe. And here in the U.S., Catholic churches across the country holding masses in his honor.
Pope Francis was a determined man. And in my mind, I think he was determined to see Easter.
President Trump meeting the pontiff in 2017, today offering condolences.
He was a good man, worked hard, he loved the world.
Vice President J.D. Vance, a Catholic, met with the Pope before Easter Mass. Today, posting he was happy to see him, though he was very ill. President Biden, only the second Catholic to be president, had a close relationship with Francis. In a statement today, he said, he was unlike any who came before him. Pope Francis will be remembered as one of the most consequential leaders of our time, and I am better for having known him. The Holy See visited the United States in 2015, greeted by President Obama. He was the first pope to address a joint session of Congress.
The land of the free and the home of the brave.
Jorge Mario Bergoglio was first elected pope in 2013. He chose his name after St. Francis of Assisi, who was known for his poverty and humility. Following in his footsteps, Pope Francis earning the nickname the People's Pope.
It's going to be a loss for us. I mean, it's just too hard to explain.
The Holy Father showed to us a father's care, a father's affection, a father's love, especially for those in most need.
We're also learning that the Pope decreed in his will that he will be buried in a simple underground tomb at St. Mary Major Basilica. Now, it's going to be days before he is laid to rest.
In 2 days, the Pope will lie in state in St. Peter's Basilica. The funeral is expected to take place in St. Peter's Square in 4 to 6 days.
And then in 15 to 20 days, the conclave will take place. That's the gathering of cardinals who elect a new pope.